see here. Where did we leave off? Got some details going. Let's do... let me start plugging some details into those forms there. Maybe drop some wires in and finish this little back piece here. This thing's still an array mesh. Yes, okay. So let's see if we can... Come on. Stop switching. There we go. And just like last time, what we're probably going to end up doing is... Hey everybody, thanks for showing up. I got in a little bit later last night than I thought I was going to, so nothing really prepped today. And also, just like, so these little dots right here are actually nanomesh, which is probably what we're going to end up converting this array mesh to as nanomesh. Just a little bit easier to move these things around. So like if I need to move these things around, I can just go into move mode and move them around. I can also turn on auto masking and topological. And I usually change this range down to 1.5, or you can go into your brushes. I guess we don't need to go there. You can hit B, M, and there's move topological in here that basically turns that on and changes the range. But what I'm doing is just basically moving a plane around, because these things here are, if we go over here to nanomesh, if I do show placement, you're going to see these little cards are sitting here. If I turn nanomesh off, you're going to see those little things disappear, those little, and basically they're placeholders. They're just like little screws or little tabs in there that attach underneath. They kind of make it look like it's being pulled in one direction. So I can turn a show placement off, that'll get rid of that little card. And really all I'm doing is moving around a little card and not having to move around like a little cylinder. So at any time, what I can do is go over here and change the offset of the rotation of any one of these things. Or I can go in here to edit mesh, or what else can I do in here? I can throw another nanomesh in there. I can do nanomesh from, replace nanomesh from brush. If I ever want to replace all of these at once, it'll maintain the same settings, but I can put in another mesh in here and move it around. So also looks like these are a little bit thick, so I'm going to drag these down a little bit. I'm going to turn off topological so I can move both of these at once and just kind of push these down into the body here a little bit more. And same thing for this one. On these ones here, I guess I can do that real quick. I have, I'm trying a little bit of this. So if you look at this reference here, this is like a little workout suit with a little bit of mesh in there. So it's basically like our tech suit, but it's got a little bit of mesh over here, a little bit of breathability in the fabric. I don't know if I'll keep it or not, but I thought it was cool enough to give a shot. So I just use that reference to kind of put this stuff in here. Let me go over that real quick just to start out with something. Thanks for showing up, everybody. If I miss anything over here in the comments, I'm doing 3 comment streams right now, so I can sometimes get a little bit backed up. How did you make the pattern on the sides? Yeah, so this thing here, let's go ahead and talk about that. And sometimes ZBrush 4.8 will do this, where it'll keep the freehand stroke and it'll just be drawing out your character freehand. Just go to dots and then go back to drag rect, and that'll go ahead and put that back. Okay, so we've got this here, and we're going to do this pattern on the side real quick. So if we want to replace something with a pattern, what I'll usually do is I'll take this one here, and we'll do it 2 different ways. So we'll take this one, we'll duplicate it off, I'll hold down Shift and do this up arrow so I know it's at the top. And we'll hold down Shift and isolate that in just a second. Another way you can do it is, there's nothing really to grab on her. Let's grab her face here. So I'm going to take her face, I'm going to duplicate her face, hold down Shift, bent up arrow. Now I'm going to hold down Shift, turn off these eyeballs, and then turn these on. So we're just going to be playing with these 2 things here. So if you don't have something specific you want to apply, if you just want to put like a headband on her, what we can do is we can go ahead, go to geometry. Let's say this is a Dynamesh here, so we can go ahead and delete lower. It's just a solid mesh, right? So we'll go ahead and go in here, we'll go to slice curve, and we'll just slice, or you can mask and make a polygroup. However you want to make a polygroup on here, just go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead now and go to select rectangle, isolate this polygroup, and we'll go ahead and do geometry modify topology delete hidden. Now, What we're going to use is nanomesh. You can use micromesh for this as well, but nanomesh is usually a little bit more robust. And in this particular case, if we're just doing fishnet type things, micromesh is just fine, because we're basically in nanomesh going to replace every single face with a fishnet mesh. And in this case, what we're going to, these are a little bit small, so that'd be really tiny fishnets, and they don't really wrap around the object that well. So I'm going to go down here to ZRemesher here, and we'll do depth of slice down to 0 because we want nice even quads. And I'll just do ZRemesher half, so it's at 10,000 now. Let's go down to 5,000, and we have X symmetry turned on, so it'll be symmetrical. And just keep hitting half or dialing in that target polygon count until it's the size you want. And it looks like we have double turned on, so I'm going to go to display properties, double turn that off. And if this is the size of the fishnet you want, that's fine. And then if we back out here, you're going to see we have this object here. So when I was doing those patterns, what I did was just take this top polygroup here, and then just go ahead, go down here, delete lower, and delete hidden, and then just do the exact same thing. Where it's like these are too small, and this one looks like I ZRemeshed it. I get better results when I ZRemesh things than when I just manually go in and plot points, unless it's really simple. So I'll just again go down to depth size down to 0, target polygon count half, hit ZRemesher, and let's see. Okay, there we go. I don't know what that initial thing was. There we go. Now if you wanted to clean this up, it looks like it's having a little hard time transitioning between this one and this front one here, so you can go in there and put in a line there. Or you know what, this is fine too. So we'll do that fishnet on both of these things. So we've got both of these things here. So we'll start with this one, and we're going to use nanomesh. So what I'm going to do is go out of edit mode, hit Control N, grab our simple brush here, grab a plane 3D, go into edit mode here, and let's go ahead and make it a polymesh 3D, go to geometry. I'm just going to hit reconstruct about that many times, because what I'm going to do is hold down Control Shift Alt, get rid of these center ones here, and go to geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And then I'm going to get rid of these extraneous, although this one might work. I'm going to go to insert single edge loop, hold down Alt, and let's go ahead and delete higher. Hold down Alt, let's go ahead and hit X to go across X symmetry as well. And we'll just go ahead and get rid of these here. There we go. Now, when I do these fishnets, these points have to line up and match. So what I'm going to do is hover over this point and do delete point, and we'll just delete these points here. So now what I do, if I hold down Control and drag out a copy, basically these fishnets are going to just repeat in this pattern here, and then this pattern here. So every face is going to be filled up. Now I already know, because I've done this before, that I'm going to need to go down here. We can use the widget. You can also, since this is in the center of the world, go to deformation, and you can just rotate this along the Z 45 degrees, or you can hold down Shift and just wait until you hit 45 degrees on that little number down there. Another thing we're going to want to do to make this a little bit more even topology around here and allow it to bend around our surface, what I'm going to do is go to Insert Multiple Edge Loops, and we'll just drop that in there, and we'll just tap that one, hit Control W. Now I've got our fishnet mesh here. So now that that's sitting out here, I can make an insert mesh brush and create brush from what do? We go create insert mesh, and then you can create a nanomesh brush from this, or you can just leave it sitting out here and just grab it later. That's what I'm going to do. So go back to our character here. We've got our headband. There we go. And now I can hover over this face, hit a space bar with the Z modeler brush BZM. Go insert nanomesh, polygroup all, hit M, and then just grab that mesh there. And then when you drag this out, you're going to be dragging that mesh onto that nanomesh onto this object here. So I'm going to go to the geometry, modify topology, and we'll do align edge just to make sure these are all aligned. Of course, you could probably do most of that in the nanomesh properties here underneath alignment and just say align to normal. We'll just go ahead and do that first. Now I want to make sure these things fit in here at a size of 1 with no offset and no rotation. There we go. So now all of these things should match up here. If I do show placement, turn that off, you can see that this is basically our fishnet mesh that we're going to use. You can offset these things if you want to, but this is what I'm going to use. So I'll turn show placement back on. We'll go inventory, 1 to mesh, and now I can hold down Control Shift, isolate your band, Control-Shift-Drag to get rid of that band. Go ahead and Geometry Modify Topology, delete hidden, and then go ahead and Geometry Modify Topology weld points to weld all these points, because if you didn't do that and you went in here and you like subdivided, you'd see they'd start splitting apart there on the seams. So just go through here and just weld. Now that you have that, now you can go in here with your Z Modeler brush, BZM, QMesh, polygroup all. Go ahead and give this thing some thickness here, like so. And now if we go out of solo mode here, so go to subtool here, hold down shift, bring everything back. We'll go ahead and alt tap this one, get rid of that. There we go. So now we've got our fishnets here. You can go through here and you can move this around. And you could also do this on the nanomesh if you wanted to have the nanomesh still there. So that we have that. You can also go in here to deformation menu, geometry deformations, and do like an inflate of 0.25 or something. And you can also, I'm going to go over here and uncrease all. So that's under your crease menu. Where are we at? Uncrease all. There we go. Now when you hit D for our dynamic preview, that'll go ahead and give us our, that looks like those packages of oranges you get at the grocery store. That's what that is. So let's go ahead and delete that. And same thing for this one here. If I go into solo mode, hit F to frame it. It's just going to replace all of these squares here. Now, if this one here, let's try and do micromesh instead. So we'll go to geometry. Let's see if I remember where micromesh even is. It's been a while since I've used it. There it is. So modify topology micromesh. We'll just grab that mesh here. And now it says best preview render, turn on draw micromesh in the render palette. So we'll go up here to the render palette, render properties, draw micromesh, and you can see every single one of those faces now is drawing that mesh. If I hit BPR render, let's turn that SPIX down to 0 so it goes faster. You'll see this is the micromesh that we're getting. It looks like it's overshooting that size a little bit. Let's go ahead and align these edges. Optimize points around edges. For some reason, it's overshooting that. So what I might have to do, let's try this real quick. I'm going to take this one here. And for the micromesh, what I'm going to do is I'll just hit W to go into our gizmo mode. And let's just put this back to a square here. Let's see if that helps it any. So that's on there. Let's go back into draw mode. Let's go back to our original object here. Hit F to frame. There we go. And micromesh, we'll turn it off. And then we'll turn it back on using this. And then we'll hit BPR. Yeah, those are going to have to be... I'll have to figure it out for micromesh. There's something... Oh, you know what it is? Let's try Unify. Let's go back. Let's just keep trying. So I'm going to hit F here. We'll go ahead and rotate this 45. And then we'll go ahead and do deformation, Unify. And then we'll go back here. We will turn off micromesh. Grab our new one here, hit F to frame, hit BPR, there we go. Now they line up. So if you like this geometry, you can go ahead and go to geometry, micromesh. In order to get this as actual geometry, go here to geometry, where is it at? BPR, oh, it's up here, underneath your, boop, boop, boop. There it is, convert BPR to geo, there we go. And now again, you're still gonna wanna go in here and weld these things. It's under your geometry modify topology weld points, and we'll go ahead and do uncrease all. And you can also go in here to geometry or subtool, and instead of doing a Z modeler, you can try doing an extract. I'm trying to smooth this down. We'll hit extract. That's a little bit thick. Let's change that to 0.005. You can extract that out. Oh, that's just a little bit thick. There we go. That'll work. I'll go ahead and hit accept. And on ZBrush 4R8, when you hit accept on an extraction, it'll go ahead and select it for you. So now you've got that all extracted out, and you've got fishnets like that. So micromesh, nanomesh. Don't need this one anymore either because we duplicated that off. Go out of solo mode. So there's all of that. Okay, so it's been a while since I looked at the comments. Let me do a quick look through real quick. Is 4R8 worth the upgrade from 4R7? Well, it's free, so even if it's not worth it, you might as well do it. Oh yeah, let me go ahead and start spamming you guys with links. Okay, so if you want to know more about 4R8, you can go here to my playlist. There's a What's New in ZBrush 4R8 It's kind of knocked down. I think it's in 3rd place right now. So you can go there, and then I'll show you all the new 4R8 stuff. Is it possible to make Booleans without losing subdivision levels? Not on the union mesh. I mean, obviously, everything on here has subdivision levels. So if I make this a start group, and I go all the way to the very bottom here, and I append a sphere, and on the sphere, just to kind of do something weird, let's go ahead and let's turn all these things off. Let's see, what are we doing here? We're going to go to, we don't want array mesh, don't want nanomesh, we want surface noise. So there's our surface here. We'll turn on surface noise. We'll go ahead and change our noise strength here and our scale. And we'll go ahead and kind of mess with this here. There we go. So we do some surface noise on here. Now, because I have a sphere here, and I go into gizmo mode here, and I set this to subtractive, and I turn on my live Boolean render, you're going to see it's, you know, she has thickness all through here, so it's basically just destroying her. And she also has subdivision levels here. So if I go and move this around here, let's turn that off. Okay, let's hit F to frame. Looks like I was in here. So this is a huge sphere here. So if I kind of push this through, you're going to see it doesn't have any, you know, I have subdivision history on all of my subtools here, but I'm able to pass this sphere all the way through her as a Boolean. Of course, you know, when we go to do the detailing on her hard surface stuff, we'll be just doing this as a live Boolean, so we don't have any problems here, you know, maintaining our subdivision history on the individual model. Now, of course, if we make a union mesh, which is like to go, okay, I like what we see here, so let's go ahead and go to our subtool Boolean, make Boolean mesh. It's not going to keep your subdivision history just because it's going to create a Boolean where on the edges of where the two Booleans intersect. Let's see, let's go ahead and delete that there. Go out of edit mode here. Edit, make polymesh 3D. Let's go ahead and go down to initialize QCube and then deformation unify, and then control W, control, pull out a copy of this thing here. And then for both of these, let's go ahead and go to our geometry dynamic subdiv, smooth down, QGrid up, coverage down here, and I guess we'll turn smoothness up to 1. So now that we have this, we can go ahead and isolate this one, Control Shift A, split hidden. Let's do smooth subdivision up to 2 just to smooth these out a little bit more. So we've got these two here. This is a start group. That's our subtractive mesh. Let's go ahead and switch these. Start group, subtractive mesh. There we go. And then we got our Boolean here. So, and actually, if we want actual subdivisions on these, what I can do is go to the dynamic here, hit apply, and then grab this one. And let's go into solo mode here. Apply. So this is actual subdivisions now. So we've got subdivision on this one, and of course, if we are to Boolean these things with our union mesh, because you know these things do have subdivisions, so I can just drop these down as needed, and it'll just update on the fly. But once you make your Boolean mesh here, actually let's turn on dsubdiv. There we go. Union mesh here. Yeah, it's not, you can't really reconstruct from this. Now you could probably do some fancy stuff where you could get rid of the exact edge rings or edge loops that would make it more reconstructible and reconstruct your subdivision history, but you wouldn't really be able to get your subdivision history back because it's very particular when you subdivide something. And we did this last time too. If I go in here to a plane 3D, go into edit mode, make a polymesh 3D, this plane here, I can reconstruct subdivision history on it because it's perfectly laid out to, you know, every single face is divided into 4 new faces as it subdivides. However, if I delete lower and get rid of just one ring here, delete hidden and reconstruct, it's not going to let me because it already knows that I can't reconstruct this back down to every single, all 4 of these little faces here need to make 1, and if it goes all the way through your mesh and it doesn't come up with a perfect remainder, it's not going to be able to subdivide. However, if we get rid of a ring around each side and then delete hidden and then we do reconstruct, it'll allow us to reconstruct once, but now you know, we can't reconstruct any further. If we keep getting rid of rings, we'll be able to eventually, let's go ahead and delete hidden here. We'll reconstruct, oops, let's delete higher, delete hidden, reconstruct. Yeah, it's still not going to let us partially hidden. Okay. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Let's go back here. And we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Delete hidden. Looks like we didn't grab enough on here. There we go. Reconstruct, 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 and it'll allow you to reconstruct. But it's got to be able to make 4 faces into 1 face all the way down. As soon as it's not able to do that, it won't let you, or until it hits a triangle. And then obviously you can't reconstruct a triangle into a mesh face. Oh, hey, thanks for showing up, Jimmy, and thanks for the happy birthday. Yeah, we had quite the birthday extravaganza in Kerrville, Texas that kind of went awry at the last minute. Yeah, it's a free upgrade to R8, so, and there's a lot of really cool features like the live Boolean stuff is more than enough reason, but the vector displacement maps as well, and there's a ton of stuff. What would generally be the try count of a current gen in-game character? Depends on the game you're making. If it's a fighting game, I don't know, 100,000. If it's a top-down 3-quarter massive multiplayer online game, then 5,000. Or less. Or more. It depends. Typically, preferred tool for UVs unwrapping, usually Maya and Hedis. Make Booleans without losing subdivision levels. Yeah, I mean, you'll lose the subdivision levels unless you do some very specific things like we just showed. And again, it depends on the type of game, not necessarily what the platform is. It doesn't matter if it's the Xbox 360 or, of course, okay, that's how old I am. The Xbone and the PS4 and the Scorpio and the whatever the new ones are. It depends. Like if it's VR, you're not going to have as many polygons to throw at a character as you would just a fighting game. 2 characters on the screen with a parallax background, all that stuff. Cool, cool. And again, if I miss something, I'm just kind of doing just a quick pass through here to make sure I didn't miss anything. Custom menu is available for download if you want to go to... Oh, you know what? I did update it on my Gumroad. I wonder if I updated it on my ZBrush. Sorry, I got this keyboard under here and it's... Move my phone, move this keyboard, now I can type. There we go. So on this Gumroad page here, if you go all the way to the bottom, there's a intro to ZBrush files. My R8 stuff is in there. Although it's really easy to make your own custom menus. In fact, if you want to make your own custom menus, if you go to the intro to ZBrush part 2, that'll walk you through how to make your own custom menu and custom hotkeys and stuff like that. This one here is supposed to be ZBrush. There you go. And I think I also updated it on my ZBrush, but I'm not positive. I'll have to go and check that. But if that's more your jam, you can go check that out. Oh yeah, let me go ahead and post that too. If you want a slightly more robust way to view that YouTube channel, if you go to this ArtStation link, that'll kind of walk you through with a few more pictures and stuff. After the hey Axel, thanks for showing up. After a bit of the R8 release, which are the new tools you're using the most in your current work and pipeline? Is there any of the old ones you stopped using so often? Honestly, I haven't even used R8 that much. Not because I don't want to, just because I've been doing other stuff. I've actually been going back and doing rendering stuff. Speaking of, I was going to do it today, but again, I got back way too late last night. So I'm going to do a stylized rendering based off of the Pablo Munoz Gomez stylized rendering. We'll start that next week. So I'll send you guys some links before then. If you guys want to show up and go through that with me, of course, it'll be on video on demand. I'm going to record it and edit it so we can throw it up on the YouTube channel. It'll be a little bit nicer to go through. But honestly, I haven't really used much of the new stuff yet, which is bad, but I need to get more of that. Any tip for sculpting cloth wrinkles? Use Marvelous Designer. or lots of reference and lots of time, in my opinion. I am still using the Intuos Pro Medium. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And you don't have to get Hedis. That's more of a crutch, really. Jimmy says, I'm unwrapping my game character in Maya now. Next up to get Hedis. Maya's UV tools are pretty robust. And any, as far as I know, like 3D Studio Max, Modo, if you use ZBrush has, the UV Master, 3D Coat, does Topo Gun? I don't remember. UV tools, I forget. It's been a while. Everything's pretty robust nowadays. I know Maya. If you're using the UVs in Maya, get the Maya 2017 UV toolkit. That's a lot more robust, and you just basically open up the tools and just go right down the side and get it done. Thanks for the happy birthdays. I made it. Yeah, in fact, question from Sergey, how do you use Dynamesh to have it very clear and smooth? I have gotten so many bugs in topology. The Division developers use that method to create guns. I use that method to create guns as well. I wish I could show you guys. I did a ton of weapons recently on a project that I can't show, but what we might do, let me think about this. We might do maybe some weapon exploration today, but at the very least, well, with the new live Booleans, there's a lot of different options for you. Let's go turn that off. So if you go here, really it's a mix between, if you're doing weapon stuff, make Polymesh 3D. Go in here to your Dynamesh menu, which you guys obviously will be geometry Dynamesh down here. It's about resolution. Now there is a new sub projection down here. So if you go over here and you turn off this blur in your Dynamesh properties and just hit Dynamesh. So we've got Dynamesh here. You see it's nice, evenly spaced. If you want to, so we'll do Shift S to save a screenshot here. If we go over here and we turn on, oops, let me do this one more time. So there's our corner there, Shift S. We'll get that a little bit closer, you can see it a little bit better. In fact, let's go to Skin Shader. There you go. And now there's a new sub projection over here. So if you have project turned on and we change this resolution to like 32 and then hit Dynamesh, you're going to see what it's doing is giving me more simple geometry here, but really packing the geometry in here. So if you do Shift S on here, you can see the difference between those two. Now, if we hit Control N and then we go out of polyframe mode, you're going to see here's the Dynamesh result for this one. And if we undo that, there's the Dynamesh result for that one. There we go. And you're going to see there's not a whole lot of difference between the two. So that's one way you can kind of control the amount of topology. You can keep your scenes nice and light and also use that sub projection with project turned on. And that'll just kind of put a lot of that geometry around the edges where you're doing that kind of stuff. So if you go in here and you do the clip or like trim curve here. So if you're like here and here, and then we'll go ahead and just do a quick mirror and weld here. And while you're just going through here and doing your trim stuff and then you're Dynameshing at a resolution of like 32 with subprojection turned on, you're going to see it didn't change at all, but if you go into polyframe here, you're going to see there's quite a bit of weird stuff going on at the edges, and that's just subprojection giving you detail where you need it as you're subdividing. But if you don't have projection turned on and you're just Dynameshing, it's going to get kind of aliased along the edges there. In that case, what you're going to want to do is just keep your resolution high enough to support that much resolution here. So let's go to like 256. There we go. So now we've got that much resolution here. So if you wanted to, you could of course use the live Booleans here if you wanted to go ahead and throw a cube on the side here. And then actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and swap that out. We got like a pill shape. Let's do that pill shape here. So with W selected, you can just kind of cycle through these ones. Let's go ahead and replace it with this one. And now that we've got that, we can use an array mesh. We can also use sticky. So if we turn the sticky one on and then hold down control, we can drag out a copy and then just keep hitting 1 to replay last. But what I like to do, if I like to model with these things as I have duplicates out. So let's go ahead and turn on array mesh here. And we'll turn off sticky. And that sticky is just a little push pin icon. We'll go ahead and do a repeat of like 5 maybe. Turn on transpose, hit Y to go into transpose mode. And now we can just, oops, we need to actually pop this off. Oops, okay, let me turn off array mesh here. We'll go ahead and do split unmasked points. That's under your poly subtool menu, split. Here, where are we at? Way up here, subtool split. So now that we have this one selected, we can hit W. And again, Y is toggling gizmo to transpose mode, so we can turn on an array mesh with transpose mode. We'll go ahead and do lock position, lock size. And we've got a repeat of 6, so you can see, you know, there's the end here. Let's go ahead and change that repeat down to 3. And then we can kind of position these. Now, if I want to do any sort of modeling on this original one, if I go into solo mode here, I can go in here and do like a bevel, edge loop complete. Let me kind of bevel this down. Let's go ahead and do a crease poly group, hit D for our dynamic subdivs, and we'll also do our crease tolerance there to go ahead and crease those up. So now I've got those pieces in here, and if I turn on live Boolean and we make this a subtractive mesh, now you can see if we hit W, let's go ahead and hit Y to go out of gizmo mode. You can see we can start pushing these things in. So it's not Dynamesh, but we're using our live Booleans. If we do want to use our Dynamesh for this type of work, we can go ahead and go in here. I can either make a union mesh just by going to subtool, make union mesh, but really at the end of the day, what I can do is for my array mesh here, you can go convert to nanomesh to make these planes, or you can just hit make mesh, that's actual polygons here, and then we can make this a subtractive mesh here. And then, let's turn off live Boolean. Then when I merge these down, it's going to inherit the Dynamesh properties here, and it'll go ahead and subtract that. Now, before I did that, what I should have done, let's go ahead and undo that. I'm going to hold down Control-Shift. We're going to pop these off again. We're going to go ahead and split hidden. Now, when I hit D for our dynamic preview, it's going to look nice and smooth, but when I merge down, because this one doesn't have dynamic on, these are going to turn blocky again. So I need to go ahead under dynamic and hit apply, and that'll give these real subdivisions here. So again, this one's going to be subtractive. This one's not going to be. I'm going to merge those down, and now when I Dynamesh those out, it'll be nice and smooth. Now, of course, there's not a whole lot of resolution in there, so I might need to go in here to the Dynamesh properties and say, oops, let's go ahead and do 512. And throw some more resolution. Of course, you can also use subprojection and stuff like that. So it's a balance between subprojection and stuff. Another thing that we use, that I use a bit, is the groups thing. And in ZBrush 4R8 now, when you do slice curve and you slice through a mesh and you have groups on, it'll go ahead and, when we let that slice through, if you hold down Control-Shift and isolate this one, you're going to see, instead of giving me a new polygroup over here, it just does one solid polygroup. So what that's going to allow me to do is I can keep groups turned on, and now I can just slice through here and here, and then with groups turned on, I can just Control drag, and that'll go ahead and do a bunch of panel slices all the way through the mesh. It might take a little bit, but I don't have to worry about those really thin, wafer thin polygroup faces there. So there's a lot of different techniques. In fact, if you go to my YouTube channel here, I go through a bunch of techniques for the hard edge modeling. Even the old ZBrush mech helmet, that was before even ZModeler existed. So there's a lot of different ways to create really nice hard surface stuff with Dynamesh. I usually do my concepting with Dynamesh, and then once I'm finished kind of getting my ideas out, then I'll go through and do the fancier stuff, the rebuilding or doing the specific thing. Again, if I miss anything on the side, I'm just kind of really quickly going through, so I'm just kind of trying to hit the, do your Gumroad Intro to ZBrush have additional content from the YouTube playlist or something like that? Yes, there's a lot more additional content. So Intro to ZBrush Part 2 and Part 3. There's some preview videos on my YouTube channel, but the rest are on Gumroad, as well as the Reptile Creature series. There's a few preview videos on my YouTube, but the bulk of that is on the Gumroad and the Cube Brush. Yeah, I usually do go through, I try and go through my Twitch stuff and divide that up into shorter stuff, so then on YouTube it's a little bit easier to search. Although these live stream highlights, there's 79 videos in there already, so I might see if I can organize that a little bit better to kind of go through. Is the ZBrush Boolean algorithm the same with Modo Mesh Fusion because the geo looks the same with the operation? Maybe, I'm not really sure. I know you can do Mesh Fusion, and it looks like I killed this here. Let's go ahead and close that. That's another thing too, that the ZBrush has had mesh. There's a specific thing called mesh fusion in ZBrush where you have a poly group and you can put things together. It'll resolve discrepancies on the meshes in between insert meshes. So let me talk about that for a second too. If I remember to launch ZBrush, there we go. Let's see. I've used Carlos Cruz base as a starting point for opposing a sculpt. It's made out of separate subtools and polygroups and muscles and limbs. When I need to Dynamesh, my hand is welding to the body. Yeah. So you're going to want enough space in between here. In fact, if you go here to the... Okay, here's another one. Go to the this link here, the live stream full episodes. Go to that very first one, as well as on Tuesdays, I stream for Pixelogic on their channel. It's Michael Pavlovich Workshop. So if you go to this one here and go all the way down to episode number 1 and episode number 2, we talk about keeping things separate and not dynameshing things together until you have enough resolution. So I'll usually work on the hands at a higher resolution so we don't get webbing across there. And you know, keeping those separate, and then Z-remeshing when you have enough resolution to not get those things to kind of start sticking together. Cool. Yeah, I mean, and thanks for your support. But, you know, read the descriptions. If there's anything in the video that's not for you, you know, you don't have to buy them if you don't want to. I'm not here to peddle my stuff too hard. But if it is useful for you, then by all means, check them out. Might be some good stuff in there. Cool. All right. All caught up. All caught up. Let's see. Where were we at? In fact, when we did... Let me go grab Smirky here real quick. So Smirky... We were talking about that here. Yeah, so basically, we had Smirky here, and we were doing robot hands last time, and we did these fingers here. So if I Dynamesh these fingers right now, they would all stick together. So another thing you might also want to do is if you've got the arms kind of moved down into one place. In fact, how many subtools we got? 1, 2, 3. So a new feature of R8 is if we go to W here, you can move multiple subtools at the same time. So if you hold down Alt, we can reposition this pivot here. Let's go ahead and reset that to world axis, and we'll kind of move this in here. So if I want to move all these arm subtools at once, I don't have to merge them and then split them apart anymore. I can go over here to this icon, transpose all selected subtools here, turn that on, hold down Control Shift, and we'll just grab all of these, and now I can just rotate all of these subtools at once. So we can kind of rotate these out. And that'll also, if you know it's sticking to his side of his body, you can also move the fingers apart, move it away from his body, and get a little bit more traction there. Now, of course, when we have this on, if we were to go to another subtool and start moving stuff around, it's still going to be hashed out. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Shift drag to bring everything back, then turn that off. In this particular case, what I would do, if I'm in the fingers here, I'm just going to go over here to auto groups, so polygroups, auto groups, and your polygroups menu. I'm going to do a quick mirror and weld. And now what I can do with W, I can hold down Control and tap, and that'll go ahead and mask just that polygroup, so I can go through here really quickly and just kind of rotate these things one by one, just to put a little bit more space into these fingers here. Let's see. There we go. Okay, that was just a glitch in there. So now I can W, Control tap this one, and we'll go ahead and just kind of space those fingers out a little bit. A little bit easier. That type of thing. Question. I have 2 questions. Are you able to show us some more stylized sculpting techniques, or is it just not your style? And also, when it comes to hard surface, I know the techniques and how to make things, but I don't know how to have any ideas for cool hard surface suits or concepts. Any tips on visual library? Yes. For the first one, stylized sculpting techniques is usually... Like if you want to do like stylized, every stylized thing I've ever watched, and I've done, let me see if I have. So I did some old Age of Booty stuff. This is for a really old Dynamesh thing I did for Pixelogic, but for this type of thing where it's just like super kind of like DreamWorksy looking, usually, and when you're doing stylized stuff in general, let's go ahead and kill that. It's more about like, okay, in fact, let's just start here. Let's go to our comma key. Let's do this a little bit faster. Go to Tool, no, Project, and we'll grab, there we go. We'll grab this head here. So we've got this head here, and if you wanted to build up this head, so we'll just start with that shape here. Let's go ahead. I'm going to grab the select lasso, hold down Control Shift, and we're just going to kill that, and we'll smooth out the face. We'll go ahead and do a delete hidden. It's already got Dynamesh set up, so we can go ahead and just smooth this out. I'm going to change my smooth brush to smooth stronger, and we'll just kind of smooth these out. So let's say we don't have anything. We'll turn on perspective. We still got to have a head shape here. So of course, we're going to do eyeballs here. We're going to go in here and just grab, you can go brush insert, BI insert, and go to the insert mesh primitives. I have my own custom menu here, which you can get on my Gumroad if you'd like. If it draws out flat like this, just change your Z intensity up to 100. And that'll just go ahead and pop those out. So let's go ahead and split, mask points, hit W, and we'll move these back in. And now we've got our eyeballs here. If we hit, let's go ahead and set those back to the middle, and we'll go ahead and rotate these around and up. There we go. So if we hit D, we'll have a nice eyeball in here. Now, of course, if we want to put eyelids on here, for any character, but especially for Stylized, it's about really manipulating primitives in here. In fact, if we want to put an ear in here, I've seen a couple different ways. You can use cylinders and kind of mush those into shape. You can also do, if we go back to here, let's go to Brush, Curve BC, and there's the curve quad fill or the curved tri-fill. Doesn't really matter, so we'll do curve quad fill. And now with this one, you can make an ear shape here, and then you can go ahead and tap off, and that'll give you just kind of a simple primitive here. You can just go ahead and split on mask points, and then you can alt tap this one. We can rotate this one around and kind of put this where we want. And like I said, it's manipulating primitives here. So back to the face, we can go back here with our, let's do sphere 32, just get a nice high resolution sphere, and we'll dial in that nose. We'll go ahead and split on mask points, or split mask points, probably better option, so we can kind of just put the stuff in here. Again, if we hold down, well, let's turn off X, hit W, hold down Control, and drag out a copy, and then we'll just go ahead and do a quick mirror, and weld. And now we've got this one. We'll hit X to turn X symmetry back on. We'll put these into place. We can go in here to scale and scale these things up. Let's turn on LSim so it scales on the local axis. And now you can use your move brush to kind of go in here and kind of dial in like, well, where do I want the cheeks to go? If you want more on this, go to that link I sent out earlier. There's way better people at this than me on the Pixelogic live stream. I think like at least 4 of them. Let me back up one. There we go. There's Twitch streamers on here. If you go through their playlists that pretty much just do stylized stuff, go watch their stuff. They'll be much better at it than I am. I can give you my 2 cents on it. Real quick walkthrough, but you can watch them kind of do their thing. Let me see, preferences, edit, align cursor to surface. If we go back to the eyeballs here, we can go ahead and duplicate this, and let's go ahead and hold down. Let's go ahead and apply those divisions. Let's go to geometry, delete lower, and we'll go in here with slice. Actually, let's go in here with trim, and we can go ahead and trim an upper lid here, and then we'll go ahead and select this one here, and we'll go ahead and duplicate this one. We'll go ahead, and I don't know if this is exactly what they would do. I'm basically taking you through what I would do for some of this stuff. We'll delete lower, and then we'll do our lower lid here. Oops, let's go this way. There we go. All right, so now we've got our eyeball here, which is just dynamic, and then we've got our 2 eyelids here. So let's go ahead and inflate those eyelids just a little bit. Or, you know what, let's scale those up. Let's see, let's hit E or W, and then we'll go to the middle of unmasked there. So we'll scale this one up. We'll go to the eyelid here. Hold down Alt, go to the middle of the unmasked center. There we go. So now you can kind of start dialing these things in. If you want to put a brow in there, in fact, for the brow, what you might want to do is let's go to BTO, topology brush, and we can just kind of put in a brow shape here. Go to thick to thin, and we can just kind of start dialing this in. And then we can tap off to get our thickness there. We'll go ahead and split mask points, and now you've got, you know, more shapes in here. And then when you got, and for the stylized stuff, it's really more about how simple the shapes you can get in here to manipulate, because when you start sculpting and subdividing, it's going to be, let's go ahead and split mask points. and we kind of just use our move brush here. It's going to be how smooth those transitions are going to be able to be on here. So if we go in here to sphere 32, we can put in like little nose here and kind of stuck those in. Now if you want to Dynamesh these together, but you want to keep the nostrils separate, that's also where groups can come into play. So you can Dynamesh those together, and again, they'll still stay separate, but they'll still be Dynameshed in here. So you can go in here with your clay brush or whatever and do whatever you need to do. Now once you've got all this stuff set up, you know, and you can start sculpting the ear too if you want to, but let's go ahead and we'll hit D on that one. Let's go ahead and uncrease polygroups here. Uncrease all. D. There we go. So let's say we got this face kind of going. I'm going to shoot all of these to the top, hold down shift with the bent up arrow here. And then I'm just going to start merging these down. So I have a hotkey for my merge button, but for you guys it'll be in the subtool menu. And then once all of this stuff is merged here, you can just Dynamesh this all together and then go through here and smooth the stuff out. Now, of course, with the Dynamesh resolution, you're going to want to make sure that your resolution is high enough, and you're going in here and you're sculpting stuff out and making stuff look really cute, and or stylized, I shouldn't say cute. So you're able to go in here, and you know the mouth would be the same thing. So while you're in here sculpting the mouth, you're going to want to go through here and do all your sculpting stuff, or with the insert mesh brushes too, with your spheres, you can put a ball here and kind of stretch those out, and then or make a mouth bag and then go through here and do all of that. But like I said, there's much better people at this stuff than I am. I don't really do this style overly much. It's not rocket science, but it's just kind of getting in there and dialing in your base shapes and then Dynamesh them together, and then Z-remeshing to get nice smooth surfaces, and then sculpting. Cool. Yeah, Danny Mac, Shane Olson, Joe Pickup, and I mean, like I said, on that Pixelogic channel, a lot of them do the stylized stuff. In fact, I'd say almost the majority now. Cool. Yeah. So, like I said before, it's you can make a head really quick, and all sorts of characters, and doing the whole sculptable thing for this type of thing. Well, let's go ahead and use our pinch brush here. Let's see if we can kind of dial that in just a little bit here. But yeah, you can see how quickly that stuff can start coming together here. Oh, and for these little dimples I put in there, so if you use the move brush, that's just going to give you kind of a soft fall off. Of course, we're doing the whole move with AccuCurve turned on, and I have a hotkey set for that. So that'll actually pull to a point. So that's how I was able to just kind of grab and kind of pull up to a point in here to kind of get that look. So, and then of course you can go in with your Damien standard. You can start carving in and then carving out however you want to kind of get that stuff done. And then the ears over here. Now, even this ear, I wouldn't even bother. I would honestly, for a lot of this stuff, like noses and ears and stuff, you can also use a vector displacement. So if we go B, C, go up here to the Chisel 3D, you're going to see there's a ton of, you can just start building up vector displacement libraries if you want to do that instead. So you can get an instant nose or even mouths in here. So you can start building up a library of stuff you can kind of pull through and just start with that. Might be a little bit easier, as well as definitely ears. I would just sculpt a couple stylized ears that you want to use, so that way and it's okay for practice. If it's like, well, I want to practice making ears, I'm not going to stop you doing that. But if you're in production and you're making money, if you want to sculpt an ear for an hour, or if you want to have an ear done and it takes you 2 seconds, then pick which one makes the most sense for your particular lifestyle here. But I would say for these ears here, let's go ahead and do a delete hidden. And if you've already got an ear library, there is some ears in here. If we go to the body parts here, we can go ahead and grab an ear. Let's see if this is the right side. No. This side. There we go. So you can go ahead and just use an insert mesh brush or the vector displacement to kind of get you, 85% there or 100% there. These ears are, for me, I would have to do a little bit of work, but once I've done that work, I would just save it out as a vector displacement brush or an insert mesh brush, either one, and it'll already have a lot of that work done for me. And that way I don't have to go through here and go, okay, let me re-sculpt this one out. So this is going to come through here and kind of And again, this is just mostly Damien standard, standard brush, clay brush, that kind of thing. So these things will kind of curl in. And then you have your little tragus and anti-tragus and all that little weird ear stuff that goes on. And that'll just save you from having to do that over and over and over again. Again, it's not bad practice, and just get some reference out and kind of start dialing this stuff in. Let's go ahead and dig this stuff in. Now with the vector displacements, you will be able to get these undercuts going. So if we go to ZBrush chisel, hit M, and we grab like this mouth, for example, you're going to see we're able to do undercuts. Let's go to the side here. There we go. So we've got undercuts you're able to do in here, or if you want to go crazy, do some really cool stuff, you can grab these. So now the vector displacements can do the undercuts here, so you can kind of go through here and do that kind of stuff. And of course, you don't have to just limit it to, let's see, brush chisel. Oh, I also hit M a lot, but you can also obviously scroll up here. You're not limited to just drag rect. You can also change this to a dot stroke and kind of lay them on here. So we go to stroke, curve, not curve, lazy mouse. You can maintain, you can do your lazy step here. So light to thick and light again. So you can use your vector displacements for that kind of thing as well. Or if you want to just drag in a bunch, you can use drag dot, and that'll keep them all the same size as you're dragging these things out. So kind of up to you if you want to do that. Let me see. Okay, back here, and again, if I miss this, if I miss anything on here specifically, just keep hollering out. Sorry about that. Let's see. Well, I'm sculpting sometimes on a single-sided geo. If I zoom too close, the geo tends to flip or turn inside out. Is there a way to solve or avoid that? Sculpting on a single-sided geo. Let me see if I can reproduce that. So we've got a plane here, single-sided. Turn off double. Let's make polymesh 30. There we go. So you're sculpting on a single-sided mesh, and you get in too close, it'll flip. I can't get it to flip on me. I just keep zooming in. And typically in ZBrush, I try not to sculpt on single-sided meshes too much, just because there's a little bit more leeway in ZBrush. It might also just be a dry error. If you don't like seeing it, like sometimes if you get a long, thin triangle in the middle of your mesh, it'll look like, you know, it's having it look like you can see through it, but that's just basically an error in the way it's drawing the geometry. There's not really a hole, but it'll kind of look like there's a hole in there. If you don't like seeing that, just go down here to display properties and turn on double. You want to remember that's on, but that'll just draw both sides of the mesh. That might be a little bit easier. Difference between the ZProject brush and the Matchmaker brush. So the ZProject brush is what we used. If you guys missed that, we use this a lot for our cleanup in the, if you go to the live stream highlights on this playlist here on my YouTube channel, we basically took, let me see if I still have some of that. That'd be good. Helmet. No, I think I deleted it. Dang it. Actually, maybe it's under my stream. Streaming. Dang, I don't have it anymore. We basically projected stuff. So if we take this one here, and let's say, let's do this. Let's go to BTO, topology brush here, and we'll go ahead and isolate that. So we've got our topology brush here. Now let's turn off X, and let's say I want to project some of this stuff. So I'm going to grab some topology real quick, and of course you could use ZRemesh or Z-spheres. We'll just do that real quick. Now if I want a single-sided mesh, I'm going to take my draw size all the way down to 1, and now I'll have single-sided. So we'll go ahead and split unmask points. Alt tap this one. So ZProject brush, if I hold down, if I do Control D, and then we go over here to the project and do project all, Control D, project all, Control D, project all, Control D, project all, and then I go into solo mode, you're going to see we're projecting the details of that one plane to the surface here. What you can also use is if we go to BZP, that's the ZProject brush, that's basically going to project back onto this mesh here. And it's using the camera. So if I go way to the side here and start projecting like this, and I turn that off, you're going to see it's going to start shearing on the side here, just because it's camera based. So you're going to want to rotate your camera across here. So if you go again, BZP, and if you don't hold down Alt, it'll project down. If you hold down Alt, it'll project up to your mesh, and that's just using ZProject. You can use Matchmaker in this case sometimes. If you go to BMM, I think is Matchmaker brush. So you can like use this and just kind of matchmaker it, but you're going to see, oh, there's some errors here. Let's hold down Alt with our Matchmaker brush. That'll pull out. Yeah, it's looking like it's having a bit of a hard time. But I'll show you a little bit better of a Matchmaker brush scenario after this. And you can also dial in the intensity of that Matchmaker brush. If we turn that down, that'll just do a slight Matchmaker. But sometimes when you do a project all, it'll look like this as well. So what you can do is you can go to BZP, ZProject brush. You can hold down Shift to smooth, and then again you can just use that ZProject brush to just go in here and fix some of those errors. So that error-looking stuff, you can actually use your ZProject brush to kind of go through here, and you can ZProject RGB values as well. If we go into solo mode here, you can see we're just kind of fixing that. For the Matchmaker brush, what I usually use that for is if we want to conform an object to the side of his head. Let's go ahead and take this ring here, and let's go here. Okay, we've got a ring on the side of his head here. Let's go ahead and split mass points. We'll divide that up. And now, again, this Matchmaker brush is camera-based too, so BMM. And if we go to the side here and we use our Matchmaker brush, it's going to want to project this. Let's turn that back up to 100. It'll project it back to his head, but then as soon as there's no head behind from this camera view, it's not going to know what to do with it. So it'll start projecting here. So if you want to make this camera match his head here, and now when we use the Matchmaker brush, you're going to see it's going to start conforming that shape to the head based on your camera view. You can also, now using the ZProject brush in this case, if we go to BZP, it's going to want to project all of these back to here. So you can do it, it's just going to give you kind of a weird result. So in this type of scenario, this is where I would use BMM. And then you can use Matchmaker brush here. And then when you move this back, you'll see, from that camera angle, it was conforming this to his head. Now, however, having said all that, if I go ahead and delete that, actually a better example might be, let's go to brush. Let's just grab a cylinder here, and we'll go ahead and split points, and we'll go ahead and scale this down. And let's go ahead and do a crease tolerance, dynamic, apply, and we'll go ahead and Dynamesh this thing. So now if I use Matchmaker brush here, BMM, there we go. So see how this will just conform to this object underneath. In lieu of that, and if you want to use that ring example again, I'm going to go to, I'm going to drag that ring out. Now instead of dragging this ring out like this, what I can do is go in here to the modifiers here, and you can turn on the projection strength. If you turn that up to 100, it'll take the underlying mesh and project this mesh to it. So you're going to see as I drag it out on his head, it's nice. It'll just use that head to kind of warp this mesh to it. If I start going over the ear, you're going to see it is warping the mesh to fit that ear and his eye there. So, kind of watch that. But if you want to just really quickly have a bunch of meshes that conform to the underlying surface, turning on that projection strength, to the brush, doing a lot of talking, is probably the better way to go. So that way you can skip the whole Matchmaker thing and just have your mesh conform to that using that projection strength. That's what I would do. What helped you most with understanding anatomy? Improving on anatomy was definitely teaching it. So if you want to get better at anatomy, teach it, because you're just going to be going over and over and over again all the anatomy stuff, because that's the only way I learn that stuff, is doing it again and again and again and again and again. And every time I go through it, I'll retain 7% or so, and then I'll go through it again, and I say 7%, but it kind of depends. But I pick up something new every single time I go through. Something will stick a little bit better. So as far as anatomy books, they're all at work. I'm trying to remember. I've gone over this before. I'll try and see if I can dig up some stuff when this video uploads. I'll throw it in the description. Visual library tips for hard surface. A lot of that, if you're looking for speed, a lot of that is just building a library of like live Boolean brushes you like to use. So if you go to brush insert, IMM live Boolean here, if you start making some of these things here, let's take this guy and we'll start doing Let's just drag some of these out. Let's just see. We'll drag this one out. We'll hit W and we'll kind of start scrolling through. And I'm just looking. Okay, here we go. So we'll take any of these. We'll take this one here. And let's turn on X. If we turn on X, oh, it will do both sides. Nice. So we can start doing this stuff here. And let's go ahead and do split on mass points. And now we can have this as a start group. This is subtractive mesh. We can turn on our Boolean render and we can start, kind of digging this stuff in. So getting shapes that you use a lot is a really important one for speed and just kind of building that library. And then you can go in here. Again, since this is just live, you can go in here with your move brush and just kind of start dialing in how you want these things to interact. And we can go ahead and turn on D for our dynamic subdivision to kind of get a better preview of this. So we can kind of dial this in here. And now, as far as building a visual library of this stuff, it really is almost building. I mean, you're going to want to make stuff that looks manufactured. So a lot of that is just going to come from reference, just like cloth sculpting is like, when you're going through and doing reinforced metal or how things are machined out of another thing. And also building a library of stuff that's going to bake correctly. Like this inset is kind of straight back, so I would tend to do insets that are a little bit more angled, just so we can get a little bit of a better bake out of them later on. But your mileage may vary on that. But, starting with this thing here, now that this is already subtractive, let's go ahead and do another one, brush insert. I need to start making my own stuff again too. And then let's hit M and let's throw a handle in here. So there is one in here, I think, that has a handle, but it's just kind of built in, which isn't ideal. So in fact, I'm going to go to brush insert. I know there's some handles in the model toolkit. Let's see what we got in here. Hit M, or you can just cycle through up here. But I'm going to hit M, and we can go ahead and grab like this thing here. So, and the reason I'm doing, and I don't even need that. So we'll do split on mass points. We'll make that not subtractive because this one will be its own thing. In fact, if I wanted this to be in its own start group, which I probably do, I'm going to hit that start here. And then that way, when I do my union mesh, this thing will be a separate mesh. It won't be like unioned to anything. And then I can just reconstruct subdivision history if I have that. So, you got a recess in here, and you have a library of stuff you're pulling from, and you're getting these shapes out, and you can start doing that. Now, realistically, what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and do auto collapse here. We'll go ahead and turn that off. We got these two here. I'm probably not even going to do that. So starting from here, I would start with like, well, what do I want this guy to look like? How do I want him kind of divided up? Let's go into H polish here, and we'll start, giving him a little bit of the robot treatment here. So we can go into H polish. We can go into Damien standard here, and we can start. Let's go ahead and make sure our lazy radius is up just a bit, and we can start kind of going through here. And again, I could go in here with where did my brain go? I could go in here with the live Boolean and start like modeling plane cuts here. But if I'm just trying to like feel things out, probably I'm just going to go in here and concept it first. Even if I duplicate this off and just start, doing something specifically or non-specifically in here. So if I'm kind of going through here, and you can just kind of sketch on it. You can even use poly paint to kind of just draw on your mesh. You don't have to go in here and make actual panels, because that'll be a little bit less destructive as well. But once you start going through here and deciding how you want these things to match on here or to be divided up, and then you can start going through here and making these into actual planes or making your poly groups and doing that kind of stuff. So you can kind of start dividing these things up like this. I'm trying to think another thing we can do quickly. But basically this type of thing, and then going in here with your clay buildup or clay standard brush and kind of building these things up, or however you want to divide this guy up into a robot type shape is up to you. But as far as a visual library of like, well, when these things are manufactured, would this have a rivet on here? If we go in here and do like, I could put one of these here and then stretch this out. Actually, what happened there? I did something weird. Sphere 32. Oh, you know what? We have projection strength still on. There we go. Duh. So we got to move this thing in, stretch them out. And it's like, okay, how do these two panels interact? If you want to do something, we do this a lot. But we can kind of go through here and we can split this thing up. Let's go ahead and do a mirror and split unmask points here. And we can go through here, Control Shift, slice. And we can just slice right along this line here. And we have groups turned on when we Dynamesh. That'll give us 2 separate groups here. So we can go ahead and do a split hidden. And now we can do like this thing here, goes to this thing here, and then merge those down. Let's go ahead and turn off all these start groups. We don't need that anymore. And again, we're just in kind of concepting mode, so I'm not worried about if this ever happens. Let me see. Let's go ahead and turn groups off. There we go. And now we can use this one as a subtractive mesh. So when I merge these down, I'll go ahead and cut that out. And now we can kind of go through here and use our H polish or a clay brush. And you know, those 2 panels can interact. Of course, you'd probably want to pop this panel off first, but you can kind of start dialing in. Let's go ahead and do a quick mirror and weld. There we go. Make sure X is turned on. So you can kind of start determining how 2 panels interact, how smooth you want them, where you want those to go. Any one of your chisel brushes in here. In fact, you can use the chisel brush too if we want to go through here and make slightly nicer lines. But we go through the chisel brush basics on that stuff too. So making things look realistic, like how 2 panels interact with each other, or if there's you know, a lip undercut. Let's go ahead and just Dynamesh this again. If there's like a slight lip undercut here and then a lip overhang, so you can kind of get your finger underneath that and kind of pull this thing up, or if there's like little rivets on the side that keep this thing bolted in, or how it rotates, or where these things, how they kind of work together. That's just kind of looking at reference. And even if it's just old farm equipment is the look you're going for, or super high-tech hi-fi, go grab a Roomba or something and just look at how they mold the plastic and make those parts work. And you'd be surprised how quickly a lot of that stuff will come together. Even just looking at really boring objects, as long as it's got the complexity and the style you're going for, like a laptop or a monitor, or I was looking around my desk here, your Wacom tablet here for the buttons and the inset and the molding and the little knobs and little raised parts and little inset text. You can kind of use that, or even the mouse that you're using. There's a lot of really cool stuff on them. Even a simple as a mouse, where like this little lever pops in. Am I on camera? I have a little lever that pops in, and then these little weights pop out. And if you pop the weights out, you can kind of see that they have like inset little metal things. So you can kind of use that as something that you're modeling. So as always, it's just reference, that type of thing. Cool. Beginning students, you have a good practice to get the foundation skills, like 2 hours a day, tutorial and practice. For ZBrush specifically, it is basically going through the intro to ZBrush part 1 and then fielding questions as they go. And where a lot of the learning comes into play is on projects where they'll tackle something specifically. So it's like, okay, you can go through the videos and you can follow along and do just like, oh, I can sculpt a head, and that's one way to do it. But if they start getting into like, well, what if I want to do, they'll go find a character or a prop, and like, how do I make a cryo chamber? And you know, you start putting a cryo chamber together, but then you get kind of lost in some areas, or you start doing something that doesn't give you very good results. Then that's where I'm able to kind of hop in real quick and kind of show them a couple different alternatives or problem solving techniques in ZBrush usually, but in other areas as well, to kind of get that look. The look they're going for, and the modeling they're going for, and trying to make shapes in a way that doesn't take hours and hours if possible. That kind of stuff. Cool. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Using standard brush instead of the inflate. Those are pretty different. Like we got our standard brush here. Let's see, we could do L for lazy radius, like so. So that's more of the standard brush here. And you can make your standard brush really big, and that'll kind of give the illusion of an inflate. But really, the inflate brush is just more of a localized inflate here. So we can kind of start inflating this stuff up. Or we want fatter ears, we can kind of just start inflating this up, or bigger, more bulbous nose. Yeah. So if I would use inflate on like something to make it more bulbous, or inflating along those surface normals, but using standard brush would be more directionally based. So it might be a little bit harder to control. And also, you'd want to drop your intensity down quite a bit on your standard brush if you want to use it as an inflate. Also, brush mod can kind of give an inflate or pinch. Familiar with Hexract on Instagram. He does Fusion 360. But you see someone's approach in ZBrush. I use Fusion 360. If you go to that playlist I just sent out, I have a Fusion 360 quick start guide. I don't use it for like this type of thing. Like if I wanted to concept out a mech helmet or something, I would definitely not do that in Fusion 360. Although your mileage may vary, you might be really good at it. Anything organic or flowing, I'd rather use just basic poly modeling tools and then take that into Fusion 360. In fact, in the Fusion 360 playlist, let me just link that to you directly. There is a workflow in there. If you want a concept in ZBrush and take it into Fusion 360, you can do that. I think that's under working with imported objects. So basically you can just make a quick, and that's what I'll do, is I'll do a quick block out in ZBrush with all the pieces, take that into Fusion if I want to, and just rebuild it in Fusion. But now with, you know, dynamic subdivs and live Booleans, I'm using Fusion less and less, unless it's for something really specific. And usually, like, if it's something I can just take a sketch and I want it to be less destructive, I can take a sketch and do my fillets and chamfering and all that stuff. But yeah, like I said, less and less now that I have the Boolean mesh. And even the Boolean meshes that I'm getting, because it's using my topology that I created, I'm able to do a little bit more to it than my Fusion meshes sometimes. So it's a little bit nicer in that regard as well. Cool. When I'm using Dynamesh, sometimes it's creating holes. Trying to use fill holes with more holes. Sometimes that'll happen if we have a really thin mesh. Let's go ahead and hit X to turn off X symmetry. We'll throw that right in the middle. We'll reset it. And we'll just scale this down here, and we'll go ahead and do this. So if we go in here, for example, and I turn off X, and I'm just sculpting through, and I hit Dynamesh, it's going to do that. So first thing you're probably going to want to do is turn on auto masking here. So if you ever do have that, and it's already like, oh crap. So you can go over here to your auto masking here, turn on backface, and you can just kind of sculpt back through on this side. Not ideal, but sometimes that's what you got to do. And that'll go ahead. And now with auto backface masking on, you won't sculpt through your object here. If it's making more and more holes, try lowering your resolution a little bit on your Dynamesh, and sometimes sometimes Dynamesh will go through and it'll find a hole in your mesh and it'll give it like a lattice work kind of look. In fact, if we want to go into polish this thing, I'm going to turn on backface masking for my H polish, and we can just really quickly just kind of smooth this out. And of course, if you're smoothing, it looks like I put a curve in there. Hold on. Curve functions, delete. If you're smoothing stuff, if you hold down Shift, you'll see that backface masking isn't on for that. Backface masking isn't global. So you can set up a macro that'll turn on backface masking for all your brushes that you want to, or you can just turn it on for them when you need them. And then now you can hopefully Dynamesh without holes. Cool. I'm from Croatia, maybe way back in the day, a couple generations back. I think they pinpointed it to somewhere in the Ukraine, Croatia, I think I've heard too. So I haven't done my DNA stuff or my genealogy stuff, but have you heard of Blender Dyntopo? I can't use ZBrush since it has been added. It's a real-time local Dynamesh with auto edge collapse. I haven't. I needed to get into Blender. I've been trying to get into Blender so I can use the hard ops tools, but then I get caught up in other stuff. So I'll have to sit down and use Blender a little bit more. And Houdini. That's another thing I'm going to do this week, is hop into Houdini a little bit more. Do you think the anatomy tool in ZBrush is any good for learning it? Yes. In fact, I would teach my students anatomy in ZBrush if I could, but I teach ZBrush third and fourth year and anatomy first and second year. So we end up doing is using clay. So we have a maquette with Siobhan and SP, and we'll just go through and just block it out in clay. And we'll just build up our characters and then tear them down and build them up again and tear them down and do that as many times as possible to kind of learn anatomy in the round. And we draw as well, which is important, just drawing the anatomy as well as we go, and proportions and stuff like that. But yeah, in ZBrush is much easier. So the first thing when they hop into ZBrush, we'll get to the intro to ZBrush part 1, and then we'll take a break and we'll do just sculpting anatomy in ZBrush and if you go to excuse me, thanks. Speaking of, I'll send this out again. If you go to the stream, Pavwork Workshop, if you go to the Pavwork Workshop, if you go to the very first video on this one, you'll see I go through and we just kind of start with a skeleton and we kind of we do some custom muscle brushes and start building it up from there. So, I do have, I'll see if I can make some. I'll try and make some this week where I just go through and make a weapon, because it's really fun to just kind of do really, really quick concepting weapons and not worrying about getting too specific or working without. You can work without a concept and do some really cool stuff too. So I'll see if I can do that this week. Orb crack brush. I do have that. Yeah, for stylized rocks and stuff, I would definitely use that. I've used that before. I know Pablo has some really good brushes on the ZBrush. His ZBrush website. So I'll bring that up when we get into those. But yeah, for like the World of Warcrafty look, those are really useful. Cool, cool. When you're sketching a model ZBrush with clothes and everything, but it's all in Dynamesh, what is the workflow to get the model to the stage of being used for texturing? You need everything separated into subtools, because otherwise you wouldn't probably texture all the different objects. Yeah, and I do that if you go to, I guess it was on this channel. So if you go to the live stream highlights videos here, we go through and we made robots. So we basically took a bunch of different robot parts and we had quick breakdown. We were in ZBrush, and then we just made our game resins in ZBrush with a material ID. So while you're in here with the subtools, you just name all your subtools, export those out as your high res, export your lower res versions out, do some UVs, bake your materials in Substance Painter, and then just make some robots. So at the end of the day, you'll have, and also throwing it up on Sketchfab if that's your thing. So for example, export tiling. Oh man, there's so many videos on here. Let me go back further. There we go. IRA rendering. Yeah, Substance Painter. And of course, on my YouTube channel, we have a lot of that Substance Painter stuff too. So yeah, once we get it all baked, going in here and just doing a quick Substance Texture Pass, 61. And then once we get them all textured up, we throw them into IRA render, which I think this is maps and what they're used for. Let me see. Textures, IRA rendering. So once he's all textured up, there's a built-in renderer in here. You can just kind of throw it in. So this is just this quick ZBrush sculpt, and then baking in Painter, and then going in here and doing that. Of course, there's a million different ways to bake your maps. There's a million different ways to do your UVs, do your low-res topology, all that stuff. But for quick iteration in Engine, I'll just do things really quick and nasty, and then once I get things approved and everything's kind of settled in, that's when I'll make the decisions to go through and do the hours and hours worth of work to kind of get everything really super nice. When live Boolean is active, I can't see my masking unless polyframe is on. Is this a bug? I think that's just it might be a bug, but I think it's a feature of turn on solo mode, turn off solo mode. This how the render Booleans work. Let's go ahead and undo all that. Get our head back. There we go. So yeah, if we take this one here, so if you have a mask here, did I turn on curve mode for mask? Really? That seems weird. Okay, so we got our mask here, and then we've got this one. Alt tap, alt tap, alt tap. Come on. There we go. And we'll make this subtractive with our live Boolean is on. Yeah, we're not going to be able to see our mask here unless we turn on polyframe, and then we can see the polyframe here, but we still can't see the mask. Of course, this thing isn't selected. But yeah, so no mask, and then you can kind of see the mask with this polyframe on. It's probably a feature just while you're working in here. Let me see if I take this here and move this into the masked area. You need to play with this stuff more. Let's turn on polyframe mode. There we go. And then go back here. So there's our masked area here. Yeah. I think it's just how the live Boolean renderer is working. I'm not sure if that's something they're going to fix or if it's just part of how this thing works. But yeah, I can see how that can kind of get a little bit confusing in there as you're working with masked objects with this live Boolean turned on. I have the live Boolean set to a hotkey, so I can just really quickly toggle it on and off and kind of see what I'm doing. And this is also Shift F. I don't think that's the solution you're looking for, but and there also might be a setting somewhere in here, but I'm not positive where that would be off the top of my head as far as the live Boolean and masking thing. Whoops. Okay. Sorry again. I apologize. I'm kind of just going through these things really quickly. Any tutorials for the beginner in the software, like shortcuts, interface, all the options. I might be biased, but you can go to this guy's channel here, Michael Pavlovich, and he's got an intro to ZBrush part 1, part 2, part 3, if that's what you're talking about. And that'll kind of walk you through most of the ZBrush stuff and what's new in R8. Thanks for showing up, everybody. How are we doing on time? I got about 30 minutes left. Where I can find artistically necessary anatomy videos. Yeah, there's Proco on YouTube's a good one. Let me see if I have any off the top of my head. There's anatomytools.com, Zygo Body, but that's not really artistic anatomy. That's just a cool website. Let me see if that shows up for you guys. You can load that up. Off the top of my head, I'm not really sure. Let's see if this renders correctly. I think it should. Yay. Yeah, this is a really cool reference as well. So if we go, okay, so we don't want to see any of the nervous system stuff or the circulatory system. If you want to, that's fine, but we're just going to do muscles and bones here. And so now you can kind of see exactly how these things line up. So if we do something like the biceps long and short head here, you can kind of see those things and how they interact. If you go in here and turn off the muscles, you can just see the bones here, and they can hold down shift and just keep selecting, you know, these things here. So you can select the scapula and then the ulna and the radius and stuff, and kind of just really pinpoint how these things are interacting. And then of course you can bring everything back, and then you can start selecting more stuff here. So, and then you can go through and get rid of this. So another really cool reference. I think this one's free, so you can kind of dial in and out how many ribs down the pectoralis major goes, and you can see it kind of flips over and then attaches to the humerus there. So cool reference for some of that stuff. But again, that's not necessarily artistic anatomy. That's all the anatomy. And artistic anatomy is, generally speaking, just superficial anatomy, so stuff that's not really deep. Although there's some artistic anatomy that is deeper, like your spinal muscles in here that are underneath your latissimus dorsi that kind of make shapes, so you got to kind of pick and choose them. But there's books on anatomy, artistic anatomy. Nothing specifically off the top of my head, but maybe somebody else can chime in on their favorites. How do you ZBrush live Booleans? You don't ZBrush the live Booleans. You can ZBrush a union mesh, and we go over that in the video. In fact, we can just do it here real quick. So we go here to a cylinder here, and then we can go ahead and say, yeah, make polymesh 3D, and then we'll go ahead and what am I looking for here? I'll do a crease. So dynamically crease this one, control drag off a copy, split on mask points, and we can make this a start group. So if you go in here, let's turn off auto collapse, and we'll turn on our Boolean render. So if we have a Boolean mesh like this, ZBrush, this isn't technically geometry yet, so ZBrush doesn't know that that even exists or like that. But what we can do is, let's go ahead and do, let's go out of our live Boolean render here, and we'll do a quick polygroups, group by normals, and we'll take this one here and we'll also group by normal, so that way when we live Boolean these meshes together, let's do another one. When we group these things together, or when we Boolean these things together, we'll have polygroups in there. So if I have this one here, we can go ahead and say, okay, so on our Boolean mesh, we're using dynamic subdivisions. We'll make a Boolean mesh. This is our union mesh here. And now we've got different polygroups here. So now ZBrush will be able to go through and use those polygroups if you wanted to you can duplicate this thing off. I don't know how well it's going to do on these particular curves, but we can give it a shot. We can go over here to our geometry, ZRemesher, say keep groups, smooth groups down to 0, target polygon kind of 5 is fine. We can go through here, and now we can kind of ZRemesh that result. So it'll go through and, keep groups basically keeps these things nice and crisp, and you can try going down half if you want to, or changing our adaptive size down and see what kind of results you get. But it'll ZRemesh it for you. But it has to be a union mesh. It has no concept of live Booleans being actual geometry until you make it actual geometry. After generating the Booleans in actual mesh and ZRemeshed, everything turns into complete and utter chaos. What's your workaround in this case? This doesn't look too chaotic to me. Although, depending on the complexity of your shape, it can certainly get a little bit difficult to work with. Let's see. So how to remove this panel when working with ZModeler. I don't see it says this screenshot was removed. So I'm not sure. Oh, it looks like I was able to see that, but Nightbot's not letting you post things. It looked like the image was removed. Thanks for showing up, Malchior. How to remove the panel at the top when working with ZModeler. Again, I didn't see the image of that, so I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. But oh, this panel up here. You can go to here to Preferences. Where is that at? That would be Interface. Wide, but IMM Viewer. You can auto show hide. You can turn that off, and that'll just make it so it doesn't show up. You can also change the placement of where it is on the screen, so turn that off if you want to not have that show up. Do you still do any retopology manually, Topogun 3D Code or Maya modeling toolbox? Yeah, I try not to until I'm really sure that it's what I want. So when I'm doing rapid iteration, what I'll do is just decimate or ZRemesh, bake, get it into Engine really quick, as fast as possible. And we're not talking like, oh, it's going to take me a day. I'm talking like 40 minutes to go from ZBrush to an Engine and it running around. So that kind of turnaround. And with tools, you can actually get it to do it automatically, depending on how fancy you want to get. And, tech artists and writing stuff and copying weights and how robust your system is. But getting stuff in quickly with materials and kind of getting sign-off first is really important, because I really, one of my biggest pet peeves is going in and spending the time retopologizing, making everything perfect and making sure there's no bruising of my normals, making sure my UVs are great, only to have somebody come in and go, you know what, turns out we don't want a frog creature, we want a rabbit creature. So then you have to go back to square one, and all of that kind of production work is just wasted. So wasting production work is a real pain in the butt. So not one of my favorite things to do. But yeah, so I will use this stuff. Sometimes I'll use ZRemesher for kind of like to get me 80% there and I'll clean it up, or sometimes I just have to go in manually and just retopologize everything from scratch. Sometimes decimate can kind of get you sometimes a little bit closer too, but at the end of the day, if I'm doing something really specific, it's pretty fast to go through and just rebuild. It's boring, so get out your favorite Britney Spears album and go to town, but it usually isn't too terrible, especially once it's approved and finalized. Then the work you're putting in is done, so you only have to do it once, and then it's not that big a deal. Good point. So Speculation says also make sure your model is high enough poly before running the Boolean. Lower poly seems to not work well for this method. I would agree with that. When I use the clip curve tool, it often leaves like a sliver or geometry that stretches out from the cut line. Is there a way to fix this, or another method of making the cut? Clip curve. Oh yeah. Yeah, so one thing you can do is turn off live Boolean here. So if we go back to our cool head here, let's see, we can go ahead and get rid of this projection thing here. Okay, so we got our head here, and if we go, okay, Control Shift, and we're using our clip curve brush, like so, and it's like, okay, I want to clip this down to a line, and okay, perfect, now I'm going to put a little brain in there, and then you go down to the bottom and you see these undercuts are kind of showing up. So if I was to Dynamesh this, you get the really thin sliver ring around here, if that's what you're talking about. What I would do in this case is I would use the trim curve brush. What that does, instead of clipping, what that'll do is do a slice, delete. Well, I can walk you through it, but it basically goes through and slices and fills whole. You'll still get a little bit of an undercut, but it's a little bit more manageable. So basically what it's doing is doing a slice. Let's go ahead and make this all one polygroup. So it's doing a slice, and then it's doing a Control-Shift, isolate, and deleting hidden, closing holes, and that's what it's doing all in one fell swoop. Again, that close holes operation won't be perfect. What I might do instead of clip in this particular case is we'll go ahead and keep groups on with our Dynamesh, and now we'll do a slice curve. And now when I Dynamesh this thing, that'll go ahead and run a Dynamesh operation. And then if I invert that, you'll see we have, it's clipped down, everything's nice and tight, no overhangs there, and everything's good to go. Now, if you wanted to, in fact, let's go ahead and we'll do this one here, and we'll do another slice curve here. So we'll do slice here. Let's go down the side of his face like we have in the concept sculpt here. We'll keep groups on. So we'll go ahead and do this one. Now we'll do a quick mirror and weld. So let's say I want this, now we can go through, and this whole piece in the middle is pretty much what we want. And we can go, you know what, we want these three to go together. So what we can do is, we can go here. Well, we just pop out the one we don't want. So we can just take this one here. We'll do a split hidden. And then with these ones, we'll turn group off and then Dynamesh that here. Did I already do it? And now, yeah, I don't have groups turned on anymore. So it'll just Dynamesh all those back together. And now I've got this piece here that I can go through here. Let's go ahead and center that here. And now I can kind of just do whatever we want to with this one. If this is like a little piece, we can pop out and have it kind of mechanically do something a little bit different. That'll be how we can kind of separate those using the split. So yeah, getting rid of those underhangs is using trim or using groups with Dynamesh instead of using clip if you can help it, or use slice and close holes. Can you make an insert mesh with positive and negative parts? Yeah, under the ZBrush 4.8, what's new, that would be the compound. Somewhere in there. Oh boy. Somewhere in there, it's like a compound Boolean. And basically all that is we'll do one real quick. So we'll take our, let's grab a polymesh here. And then I'm going to go to my custom one, and we'll just change this to a cylinder 12, just to make this a little bit of a simpler cylinder here. And we'll also go in here to deformation unify. And we'll also rotate this so it's straight up. And then if I want to use this to kind of dig into my mesh, I can go through here. Let's do a little bit of, okay, let's do this. Hold down Alt, and we'll go ahead and do QMesh, polygroup all. We can kind of QMesh these up, and then we can do a polygroup polyloop. And in fact, you don't even have to do this part. You can do QMesh polyloop, and it'll do that for you. But if you want to go ahead and make QMesh polygroup the other way, there we go. You can go ahead and do that. And then you can hold down Control, Alt, and now we can kind of move this up. Let's go ahead and actually let's just slide. We'll go ahead and slide this edge loop complete up. So now we kind of got a Boolean, so when we push this in, we'll start getting a bevel right around here. Now, if I want to put a screw down at the bottom of this, and again, we did this in the video, but again, I'll do it real quick. I'm going to duplicate this off here. We're going to solo mode, Control-Shift, hold down Alt, and we'll go ahead and delete hidden, and then we'll go ahead and flip those so I can kind of see the bottom here. We'll go to brush, insert our, where's a good one? Industrial parts here. We'll just put a screw down at the bottom of this thing. So I'm just using this as a surface to kind of dictate, how big I want the screw, how I want it positioned on there. And now we'll go ahead and do a split unmasked points, and now we can go ahead and delete that. So we've got a screw in here. I'm just going to make this one poly group in here. We'll keep the creasing. So when I hit D, it'll be nice and smooth and creased. And then we'll do the same thing here. We'll just do our crease tolerance here. And now we'll go ahead and do a crease edge loop complete. There we go. So now when we push this in, it'll subtract that out, and then at the end of the day, I can have a little screw that'll sit at the bottom. We'll go ahead and make this one polygroup, this one polygroup. We'll merge these down. Go to this angle here. We'll go to Brush, Creator, Insert Mesh, New. We'll go back to our trusty mechanical head here, we'll hit X, and then we'll go ahead and insert this. Now when I insert this, if you want it already pre-embedded, just go to your depth over here, and let's change that embed depth to 0, and that'll embed however far you want to have it embedded at first, and then we'll go ahead and do split unmasked points, and we'll make this a subtractive mesh. So now when we turn on our live Boolean render, we can kind of dictate how far in this goes. And also if you hit D, that'll go ahead and do our dynamic preview, so it'll make it nice and smooth. Now you can see as I push in, it's going to start beveling out around that end, so we can go ahead and say, okay, we want that to look like this. And now that that's set in there, that's the way I like it. Now, this isn't the ideal solution, but one way you can do this is, now that you have this and it's positioned the way you like, what you can do is we'll go in the solo mode here, we'll turn off the live Boolean render, and we have this object here, right? So we hold down Control Shift and tap, and then Control Shift drag to invert. That should have, let's go ahead and do, this is subtractive mesh, this is subtractive mesh, we don't need this one anymore. We got this one here. So we should be able to Control Shift, select this one, and then do split, split hidden, if it's going to let me. Let me see, let me see. Let's go back here. Did it not grab both of these? Let's see, Shift D. Solo. Oh, are those up? Okay, okay. When I did my poly grouping, it did different ones for that. I don't know why. So brush, create insert mesh, new. Okay, let's try that again. That's dumb. I mean, I can go ahead and fix this one. I can just do Control Shift, grab a little piece of this one, Control Shift A, and then go ahead and then split hidden now. And now I have a screw sitting in here. So now when I turn on my live Boolean render, I've got my screw sitting down at the bottom of that insert mesh. But ideally, let's do another one here. We'll take this one, brush, insert, we'll grab our, brush, we'll grab that last one that we made. And now this one should have a poly group here. So we go ahead and do this one. Doesn't have the embed, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and split unmasked points here. We'll make that subtractive. We'll push that in like so. So we've got that in the way we like it. We'll hit D, turn on dynamic preview, and now we can go in here. We'll turn off the live Boolean render so we can go, hold on, Control Shift drag. Oh, you know what? I wonder if it's not keeping my polygroups because we have RGB turned on. Or is the add turned on? Why is it not maintaining my polygroups? Okay, interesting. So we'll go ahead and delete that, drag this out. Okay, that's working. And now we should be able to go Control Shift, isolate that. Okay, yeah, now when we do a split unmasked points, oh, I'm sorry, split hidden. And then which one is this one? Sorry, this thing's all over the place. Keep organized while you're doing this stuff. So at the end of the day, hold on. Go in here. The end result should be, this one should be subtractive here. There we go. The end result should be, this thing cuts in, you have your other piece here that's cut out, and now if you did want this separate when you do your union mesh, I would start a new start group here. I'll shoot this down to the bottom. So if you do a union mesh, it'll kind of stick to the bottom of the hole. If you want it separate, make a new start group for your screws. That's just one way to do kind of a compound insert mesh brush, just to have two separate polygroups. So when you insert it, this thing will always end up at the bottom where you want it, and then you can go ahead and split that off and make a new mesh there. Sorry, and I guess when you're doing your insert mesh brushes, I'll have to look into that. Anyway, something like that. Does ZBrush QShot plugin make the UVs automatically for you? What happens when you send your model directly to QShot when using the plugin? It doesn't make the UVs automatically for you, but you can kind of texture your mesh using box mapping. It'll do projection mapping, so your object doesn't have to have UVs, but it'll kind of project textures onto your mesh that way. You can take UV meshes into QShot, and you can also do stuff like, it does stuff like this too, where you can use AO, even if your mesh doesn't have a map, it'll still be able to find the edges of your mesh based on the curvature of your high resolution mesh on the fly. So Yeah, it should work. And you can yeah, so if we took this into Keyshot now, it would render the stuff just fine and have all that stuff as polygroups here, and you know, just drag the stuff on there and render it out. And we've done a ton of that stuff in the live streams, previous live streams here. They go to playlist here, even not the. I mean, you can go to the full episodes, but the highlights here. We took Cubicle Chick, Keyshot render and stuff. We've done it a bunch. Yeah. Okay, so really I want to become a 3D artist. I'm graduating this fall with graphic design, and I'm searching for a 3D artist degree. Any suggestions in landing this career? The good news is, if you're being a 3D artist in this industry, your portfolio is pretty heavily weighted. I don't think anybody really cares where you graduated from. I guess maybe they do. Maybe if they're really hardcore fanboys of where they went to college, that might help you a little bit. But really, it's based on what you can produce, and your portfolio is a great way to kind of show people that. So the good news is just have a really, really, really good portfolio, and you won't have a problem. And, you know, make sure your portfolio is, you know, if you're giving a certain company a portfolio and they do certain type of work, make your portfolio fit their style and give them the work they want to see, and it should be pretty easy. The bad news is you have to do that. It has to be a really good portfolio that fits the place that you want to apply to. So, you know, do you need to go to school for that? Maybe, maybe not. That's kind of up to you. I went to school. I went to Ringling, and you know, it was a really good school, and really working with the students there, really, really driven students, is what probably helped me the most. Is just being around people who were really driven and kind of competing with those people. Not really competing in a bad sense. Not that that's bad or good, but competing with people at a certain level with a certain amount of drive that kind of made me better just being around them. So if that's the case, then by all means, if that's not going to be a driving factor for you, then maybe you wouldn't. You know, and really what you get out of school is what you put in. So it really boils down to, if you're going to go to school but then just kind of like, you know, get your degree in something that you're not going to put a lot of effort into, then yeah, I would just do online videos. It's a lot of money to spend on something that, you know, you may or may not get a lot of out of. But I'm not saying that's the case, but you know, if you do that outside, it's going to be the case, then yeah, pick and choose your battles there. Let's see, delete hidden here. Why is dynamic not working? Oh, it is working. It just needs to go up more because it's a really low resolution mesh. Anyway. Yeah, so for landing a career, really good portfolio tailored to who you're applying to. Of course, that's way easier said than done, but that usually ends up being the baseline. And yeah, everybody else weigh in too. my opinion is one amongst many, so I am doing well. Thanks for asking. And again, I'm just trying to get caught up on the comments here, so if I fall behind, I apologize in advance. When live Boolean, you get a message selecting resulting Boolean and click on show issue to display issues. What does it mean? Probably something about, let me see if this will do it. Let's see. Geometry. Boolean, where are we at? Sorry, not geometry. Subtool, Boolean. Yeah, that worked. But what that's probably doing, so here's our union mesh here, and there's our start group. So our screws at the bottom here. Now we did have dynamic subdivs on here, but because this is its own mesh here, you can go into geometry, reconstruct subdivision, and kind of reconstruct that back to its base if you want to. And then you'll have the rest of your union mesh here. Now because this one was additive, it is now a union mesh, so when you go through and smooth, it's going to be added there. Same thing with the eyeballs, so be careful when you're doing that. Anything that doesn't touch, though, you would be safe to kind of split out, but because this one does touch the eyeballs, it kind of unions those together. So anyway, What that's probably doing is yelling at you about coplanar faces. So under, oh man, actually, this will probably walk you through a little bit better than I could at the moment. So if I go here to my playlist here, ZBrush 408, I'll point you directly at that. Basically, there's coplanar faces you can go through, and it'll go through and select where you're having problems with coplanar faces. And the reason coplanar faces are a problem is, for example, if I do a cube 3D here, make a polymesh 3D, and then I duplicate this, I take this one, and I scale it, and I move it up, and I go, okay, I want you to be subtractive, and see how you have that kind of weirdo stuff here. So now if I go and say, hey, make a Boolean mesh, it'll make the union mesh, but it's going to be kind of busted. So you got a lot of weird coplanar issues. Basically how you would fix that, and you could have coplanar go through it, but at the end of the day, what you're basically doing is making sure you don't have faces sharing the same space, because mathematically it's going to have a hard time determining what you want to have happen there. So if you just go here and just make that a little bit bigger, and you're fine. No more issues. So I'm guessing that's what that is. And that way when you do these coplanar, you won't have any weirdo stuff going on. Let's see, I tried creating VDMs. It does work fine, but the new brush does not go into the shelf of the other 3D brushes. And how do you export your VDMs and still keep the data so that it is 3D? In fact, I tried, but it didn't work out. It should just be geometry. So when you're doing VDM meshes, let me see if I turn this off and I go into here, go into project, miscellaneous, and we'll do the brush 3D template here. And we want to make our own VDM. So this is the plane we have to pull from. So if we want to make our own custom one here, like so. And I think, in fact, oh, did I upgrade this one? Okay, I'm on P1, okay. Do I have backface masking on for this? Yes. Turn off backface masking for your smooth brush here. Okay, there we go. So we can make our own custom VDM here and, you know, do all the crazy sculpting you want to do to make this do what you want to do. So let's see if this will work for me. So you basically would have to pick what brush you, or if you want to replace the brush, if we want to throw this into the Chisel 3D, which is the other bunch of vector displacement maps, you should be able to go to Brush, Create, From Mesh. There we go. And it'll throw it at the end. If it doesn't throw it at the end, I'm not sure why it wouldn't do that, but now you should have a vector displacement map. As far as getting that out of there, let's say we didn't have this scene anymore and we just had our displacement. So we go to Preferences, Initialize. And you want to get that back. Let's see if we go back, make Polymesh 3D here. Actually, let's swap that out to a sphere here. Brush, Chisel 3D. So we've got our, our vector displacement would be at the end there. And you wanted to get this back. In that case, it would be. You might be able to hit W and cycle through. And then if we hit Deformation Unify, yeah. So you can hit W and cycle through, and it'll go ahead and just take that geometry and make it actual geometry, and then you could export this as an OBJ, or you could export it as an FBX, and the FBX importer and exporter. You could even export it as a 3D print hub. Under here, there's a lot of export options for STLs and VRMLs and OBJ stuff options in there. So you should always be able to get that back, even if it is saved as a brush, because it's just geometry sitting in there. So you can always go back in here. And in fact, you can also do chisel brush here. Let's see if this stuff will work. Maybe if we do this, let me just try this real quick. Geometry mesh from brush will also work. Geometry modified topology mesh from brush. So if you want to grab this one, it'll go ahead and grab that one for you. But you can also hit W and you might be able to cycle through. It looks like it's really small though, so when you select one, just go over here to Deformations Unify, and that'll make it big for you. So you should be able to get that mesh back. So there's no topology problems with the new Booleans. Not that I've noticed, as far as like compared to any other live Boolean solutions and how it handles geometry, I haven't had too many problems. But again, haven't used it a whole bunch just yet. I've been kind of caught up in other stuff. Did I change something with the standard brush feels different in R8? Let me see. Standard brush here. Not that I've noticed. Like I said before, I haven't really done a whole lot of sculpting recently. Seems like it feels okay to me. If you do want to kind of fine tune that, you can go into, yeah, I guess our brush is where we would want to be here. So if we go down here to, curve, create, let's do no depth, samples. Sometimes you can kind of play with this one and the brush mod as well. You can, if it's not really working well for you, you can kind of go in and modify some of that stuff with the standard brush. And if you want to keep the standard brush alone and to save your own standard brush, you can go in here and save it to, let's see, brush, save as for R8. So if you want to save your own standard brush that loads up and assign your own hotkey to and leave theirs alone, that's when you would go into ZBrush for R8, Z Startup, Brush Presets, and throw it in here. If you want to replace their standard brush with your own, you would go into Z Data, Brush Presets, and these are all the ones that come in with ZBrush. You'd want to overwrite those. You might want to save a copy just in case of this folder of the original brush presets that came with ZBrush if you want to play it safe, but you can also just replace these Z Data brush presets there if you want to modify the core brush set. How would you make a branch with a vector displacement brush, or is it too much? Really depends on how much, because all it's really doing is taking this underlying geometry here and displacing it. So yeah, if you start going this way and then out and then up and then out again and out again and out again, it's only how much your brush can handle, or how much your geometry can handle. So if we go to reconstruct here and then we go to our brush, this is probably the worst case scenario I can think of off the top of my head. Having this thing pull out, oh, it's the nose still. Give me that one. There we go. Yeah, you're only going to get so much resolution by the time it gets to that end here. See how it's kind of just like, don't know, don't have enough information there. Now, of course, dividing that up can alleviate some of that, but it's still only going to have so much pull before it starts. You know, if we go ahead and delete lower here, you're going to see we're already losing quite a bit of geometry towards the ends there. So you can try it, but yeah, might have to. And I guess you could drag it out. You could do some projection tricks maybe, but yeah. My graphics tablet is the Wacom Intuos Pro Pen Tablet Medium. And if you want to see my specs, there is a YouTube on that. And I'm just using my laptop still. I'm kind of eyeballing the some of the new Ryzen stuff before I build my new machine. So this one's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but if you did want more specifics on here, it's a pretty old laptop. Keyshot and ZBrush is pretty RAM and CPU intensive. Not so much GPU intensive, but you know, other rendering solutions are GPU intensive, like Octane and Redshift. Lumi questions here. You can go here, check out the description in my workspace setup video, and that'll show you specifics on that. All right, getting towards the end here. Any last minute questions? Poly painting, new standard brush. Oh yeah, there it is. There's the workspace setup. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry, sorry, Narek. My Nightbot's out of control. I need to go and see if I can fix some of those settings there. UV tiles in ZBrush. What's the most effective way of having a specific UV islands or recommendation other than ZBrush to have faster workflow for that specific purpose? Usually, if I'm doing stuff in ZBrush for laying out my UVs, it's just a lot of, I mean, I'll do a really simple example here. It's just making sure that we have group by normals turned on. So when I do use the Z plugin, That's probably not the answer you're looking for, but in ZBrush specifically, if it is symmetrical, we can keep symmetry on. But basically, make sure you have use polygroups turned on. Then when you unwrap and flatten this thing, and these are actually UVs you can modify as well. So we hit W, and we go into our brush. Here is auto masking, mask by polygroups up to 100. And now you can go in here and just mask by polygroup. There we go. We can go in here and use our move brush if we want to. Also, another thing you can do is if you use move topological and you make your brush size 1, it'll go ahead and just move entire topology shells. So if they're not attached to anything, you can just kind of use that to kind of move shells around as well. But you can also hit W, hold down Control, and that'll go ahead and mask these things, so you can do whatever you'd like to your UV shells. But of course, once you're done, and of course you probably wanted to work on a clone, which it'll walk you through in the ZBrush, the Z plugin. It'll say work on clone. We'll go ahead and unflatten this. So now we have UVs on here based on our polygroups. So using polygroups to kind of dictate how my mesh is sliced up is usually what I'm doing. If I want a little bit more control, I can enable control painting and like attract back here and paint like, hey, I want you to use this as my seam, but I really want to protect this area right here for some reason. So you can kind of use that to kind of dictate your seams as well. Of course, use any UV program you want to do that. So once you have that, and then you're poly painting, and then if you want to export that, if you go down here to UV map, or I'm sorry, texture map, create new from, let's do UV check here. You're going to see here's our UVs here. So when you export this, you'll have nice islands to go into Photoshop, which you can also use ZapLink for if you want to use ZBrush to hop into Photoshop. And there's also the new ZBrush plugin called where is it at? ZBrush to Photoshop. There it is. So you can use ZBrush to Photoshop, this new plugin, or you can use the old ZapLink under Document. There's our what is that? Document, ZapLink. Here's ZapLink properties. You can send this over to Photoshop and then come back and forth. So you can do painting in Photoshop and bring it back into ZBrush, and it'll project that back on there. Or you can paint in ZBrush and then export that as a texture and then paint more on that in Photoshop. So if you make a 20 million polygon character, will you separate, for example, the head for retopologizing or UV unwrapping? Yeah, and really that's more of a production question as to how the blend shapes. You don't want blend shapes with an entire body if you're just going to do blend shapes on the head. So you'd want a separate head that you can do blend shapes on the head and then have fewer points being calculated on your blend shapes. So, or you can have blend shapes converted to joints or have a system of both. So it's kind of up to you. I prefer to have my objects broken up into as many pieces as I can. That makes sense. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Yeah, I'm not sure about the brush changes. They kind of feel the same to me, but like I said, I haven't really gotten too heavy into ZBrush 4.8 in my workflow at work. I haven't had a chance to sit down and make stuff. Thanks for the kind words, everybody. I'm glad the videos are helping. I do have a live streaming schedule. You know what? I need to update that. Twitch.tv pavmic. Let me see. I put in finally, if you go to my twitch.tv pavmic, it'll be you can kind of see that Twitch TV pavmic there. If you scroll down, you'll see a bunch of links to stuff. I need to make one for my schedule. Oh wait, do I have one? I thought I did. I thought I had one for like calendar. No, that's PC specs. You know, I made one and I never actually went through with it. So I'll post a schedule on that page. Basically, long story short, it's Tuesdays on Pixelogic's live stream at 4 a.m. PST to 6 a.m. PST, and then Thursdays on this channel here, Pavmic, Twitch TV/Pavmic. Thursday mornings, 4 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. And hopefully, some days my brain's working better than other days. Depends on how the night before went. So, cool. Thanks for all the kind words, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Have you used Quixel? Yeah, I started using Quixel. In fact, if you want to use a helmet that I made, let's see. Helmet. There we go. If you go to the Dedo samples here, I made this mech helmet as a test for doing the new Quixel stuff. So you can download that mech helmet that I made. Then you can use that to kind of texture your stuff. If you scroll down, there's the mech helmet there. But honestly, I use Substance Painter more in my workflow. I use Megascans more from Quixel than I do the actual Quixel suite specifically. And Substance Painter is super easy to use. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's a Substance Painter walkthrough. But Wes McDermott does a great job on his videos. My videos are a little bit dated on the Substance side, but you can check them out if you want. I have used Marmoset 3. It's really good. It's different than Keyshot, so it kind of depends. I like Keyshot just for quick previs because I can just go up here to my external render Keyshot, just turn that on, send everything over to Keyshot, and just get a quick beauty pass, or for sign-offs and stuff, just to do quick Keyshot renders. But Marmoset's awesome too for rendering and a bunch of other things too. Cool. All right, guys, I'm going to head out. Thanks for the kind words. Thanks for showing up. I am going to do a stream about rendering next week. Keep your eyeballs peeled on. I'll tweet it out. I'll Facebook it out. I'll get it out there as much as I can as far as what we're going to be doing so you guys can kind of follow along. But we're going to do stylized rendering. All right. Yeah, I don't really use Ddo anymore, but I don't really texture that much anymore either. I usually just throw stuff through Painter really quickly to get it into Engine, and then let the material guys do all their fancy Substance Designer and Substance Painter stuff that I just roll out. So anyway, see you guys later. Thanks for showing up. Hopefully I answered a bunch of questions. And like I said, next week we'll get into stylized rendering, and then after that we'll get into maybe posing that character out that we were working on here. Let's see, ZBrush female here. We'll get her finally up and running, maybe. So we'll get this one wrapped up as far as just kind of getting workable, and then we'll maybe do some Keyshot renders or some Painter Iray renders or texturing her up or something. We'll have a little bit of fun with this once she's all kind of finished. I'm getting close. This is still form refined on the hard surface stuff, but her kind of cloth stuff is pretty much about as done as I want. I might rethink these kind of breathable fabrics in here. We'll see what it looks like when we get into the rendering part and the material breakup, how that stuff plays. But for the most part, I think she'll be good enough to just kind of do some quick, fun, rendery type things. So we'll get that figured out. Cool. See you guys later, everybody. Eventually, I will retopologize her and make her like a game engine character, but I don't think I'll have you guys sit through watching me retopologize. That would probably bore you guys to tears. So, is there a way to retopologize ZBrush blockouts in Fusion? You can recreate it. Yeah, you can. You can actually retopologize in Fusion. I might be more inclined to do my retopologize in ZBrush or another program. If it's all quads, you can import that into Fusion as a mesh that you can then convert to like patches and stuff. So that might be better, a little bit faster at least, I would think. Yeah, we can do a video on the hard surface retopology. That shouldn't be too bad. Cool. All right, I'm gonna head out. See you.